I think it's safe to say that a lot of people like Fullmetal Alchemist, and I do as well. However, not many people who are just anime onlys are actually unaware that the creator of Fullmetal Alchemist has another manga series that could in fact be the next Fullmetal Alchemist. That's right, I am talking to you guys about Silver Spoon, a slice-of-life comedy manga created by the exact same creator of Fullmetal Alchemist, and it ran for about 8 years. I tell you, it is a must read. Okay, jokes aside, Silver Spoon is nice. It is a relaxing show. It is pretty funny, so if you like Fullmetal Alchemist and you like the creator, go and check that out. But in all seriousness, the series I'm covering today is actually called Yomi no Tsugai, or Demons of the Shadow Realm. And it is a manga series created by the Fullmetal Alchemist mangaka Hiromi Arakawa, and it is also a monthly serialization. And at the point of me recording, it is 24 chapters in, and it's been running consistently for 2 full years. In all honesty, this could legitimately be the next Fullmetal Alchemist. I know some big words for me to say right here, as I have a feeling that many people are typing in the comments right now that nothing will surpass Fullmetal Alchemist, even something from the actual author. And to that I say, I guess, whatever you want. All I'm saying is that this is still a new series, but based off of where it's going so far, the world building and the characters, I do feel like it could reach that level of greatness that Fullmetal Alchemist is, and if not, potentially surpass it in the future, if we give it the chance that it deserves. But before I get into this video, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell for updates on future videos. It really helps, and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel. I want to make more manga recommendation type videos like I used to do when I first made this channel, essentially, and started covering manga. So I'll do some of these here and there, and hey, if this video does well, I might make a video or two on Demons of the Shadow Realm at some point. Who knows? But with that out of the way, let's get right into the video. So, what is Demons of the Shadow Realm, or Yomi no Tsugai? Well, it's actually kind of hard for me to talk about without spoiling the first chapter and talking to you about what the actual power system and world is kind of like in this series. Granted, I'm not going to spoil the entirety of the series up until this point. That is something else entirely. I'm just going to tell you the information that you do need to know to see if you want to give this series a try and how it has the potential to be another big success like Fullmetal Alchemist. Now, let's get right into it. So the story of this series centers around the protagonist named Yuru, who grew up in a remote mountain village hunting and just providing for his little sister, who was for some reason stuck in a cage and is not allowed to go beyond the mountain to what's called the lower realms. Based on how things are in the opening, we assume that things are in a type of feudal world, more of an agricultural type area where there's farms and some old style brick and bamboo and wooden houses. But all of a sudden, special ops units show up with machine guns and start massacring people en masse, coming down from helicopters, and then we see interesting and bizarre creatures that show up and chomp people in half, or just blow people up. And I'm like, what the heck is going on, and how can I get more of it? So it's quickly revealed that the story of Yomi no Tsugai actually takes place in more or less present day in Japan. And where Yuru was growing up was actually a place that was put in a barrier to keep isolated from the rest of the world in order to protect Yuru and his sister due to a prophecy of the two childs born between light and day, as they are twins, and they are said to possess some great power. I'm not going to spoil what that is because that's a big story revelation that we would see later, fairly early on, but it's a really nice twist that you guys should probably end up reading for yourselves. But in this confrontation, as Yuru is beginning to basically learn that his entire life right now has basically been a fabrication or a lie, in the quote-unquote hopes to protect him, this other character, Dara, who's basically going to be his guardian and mentor figure, basically helps him unlock from these two stone statues their guardian deity of the village, as they instantly destroy 2 helicopters, and now Yuru has to flee the village. Something that happens in this confrontation is that a character looking similar to Yuru's sister and calling themselves Asa basically says that she is Yuru's actual sister, and it's revealed that they were actually separated fairly early on in life. Their parents left this area with Asa for certain reasons, and Asa was stuck in the lower realms. Their parents were missing, and so to keep Yuru from looking for a sister, the village chief had to essentially fabricate a fake Asa using her demon, or her Tsugai, which I'm just going to call them demons because it is the English translation of the name, even though I think Sugai is actually a lot cooler, but it is what it is. In this world, things like cryptids, aliens, ghosts, spirits, monsters, etc. are basically all considered in the same category, based off of these things called demons, D-A-E-M-O-N, not D-E-M-O-N. It's a whole thing with the pronunciations, but either way, these things exist in the world, and only certain people can see them, or people who have had contracts with these demons can see them. Otherwise, they're invisible to the average person, as we essentially get to see in certain ways. But they could also make themselves visible to others if they want to. And what makes things interesting is that usually these demons are more or less in particular forms until they receive a contract with a master. In Yuro's case, with the pendant that he had, with some of his blood, he was able to awaken these two guardian deities who are deemed right and left to essentially be his demons, and they are forming a contract. Yuro is his master. This is essentially the power system of this world, these demons that are contracted with humans. Now, that's not to say that the humans are helpless, that they just command them like Pokemon, though some of them do in fact do that. Others can basically fight alongside them. Yuro is a hunter. He's skilled in combat and is great with a bow, being able to corner and attack his enemies, thinking of them like prey, especially when he gets in the zone. Able to think calculatively in order to corner his enemies and get the best vantage point. Same goes for other contractors and masters in this universe. And a lot of interesting things about the demons in this world is that they come in pairs, each being essentially an inverse. Left and right, fairly obvious. There's this other girl who has in chapter 1 these giant multi-eyed things that are two parts of a jaw. These are not one creature, it is two separate creatures that act basically as one. And there's others, like one guy has a hare and a turtle, another guy has a giant anglerfish and an even smaller fish. They have differing abilities, but they ultimately complement each other because they are essentially a pair. And it's a very interesting topic. Right now in the manga, there is a Sugai pair that are swords. They're demon swords with personalities, and it is very cool as they have their own versatile abilities. And based off of this, what the mangaka is basically going to can actually do is take real world myths, legends, and folklore, as well as just some hearsay or even rumors and such, or maybe take those in inspiration and craft Sugai based around this, or even certain concepts and make literal living beings in this world that could just apply to these specific rules. And the designs for all of these Sugai, these demons, are really cool and interesting. Right and left are honestly very great, and we also have others that we eventually get throughout the manga that I can just spurt on here at random as I'm talking. But the point of it is that with the Sugai and with the actual people that are contracted with them, many of them being actually capable of combat, can actually add an extra level of depth and strategy to each individual confrontation, because you also have to wonder, what kind of Sugai does this master have? What are their abilities? How can we counteract them? It does add a level of intrigue to every scenario, especially if you're ambushed by a demon that you have no idea what their abilities are, whether they just be super basic or relatively complicated. You just don't know. So it's not just, we fight, here are our demons, we just fight it out. There's a level of strategy to it that actually makes these fights a lot more interesting. And Yuro's experience as a hunter for the majority of his life at this point adds to another layer for these fights, and he can do things in a way that a lot of modern day people don't usually think of. But it went on about like the power system just now, and the demons and the masters and such for the combat, which obviously Arakawa's artwork is just really great, and the way she draws action scenes has just been very easy to follow for me, and the designs, crisp, clean, amazing. But what about the characters? The characters are actually very cool, very endearing, and I honestly instantly loved all of them. Obviously, I loved Yuro from the jump. He is a protagonist. You're supposed to like the protagonist the majority of the time. I liked Dara. His personality is honestly kind of funny. He is a stone-cold badass, but he's also kind of a goofball. Especially right now in the manga, a funny bit is that he's supposed to pretend to be Yuru's parent or legal guardian, but then they realize, oh shit, if he gets himself hurt, we don't have health insurance, this kid's gonna cost us a fortune. Or him learning about the outside world could just end up being a huge hassle for them. Which adds a whole level of comedy that I'm actually all for. Fish out of water scenarios can be very funny if done right, and I do think in this series it's done pretty effectively, and it's not done to detriment the plot at all. Asa is another very interesting character. She spent a good chunk of her life outside of the village and has no idea what her parents are doing. And she and Yuru right now are basically in a conflict between two rivaling families over what these twins' initial power and destiny is supposed to be, thus putting them at a constant level of conflict, despite the two of them basically getting to know each other. Fairly early on, we do get these two actually talk things out and begin to understand each other as well. And what Asa essentially always wanted was to meet her brother for the first time in years, wondering if he was actually safe where he was. And Yuru has had to basically grapple with the fact that more or less his entire life was more or less a fabrication meant to keep him happy, and the sister that he was basically always talking to and worrying about was a fake. So that adds a level of just a whole dilemma for him mentally to deal with throughout the series. But at the end of the day, these siblings, they have a really good dynamic starting off, and I can only see them developing their actual bond and beginning to find a way to work together despite these two rivaling families wanting to kind of hold them down and potentially use them for whatever destiny they're meant for. Obviously, I could go into every single character for the series, but I'd be here all day talking about who they are, their personalities, and why they're good. Full disclosure, a lot of the characters, if not all the characters, are very well written. They're engaging, you like their stories, whether they be the antagonist or just the main character groups, or just people from each of the individual families that you just end up enjoying their company when it comes to reading the story. You just want to see more of them just for their personality alone and not about their abilities. And you're curious to see how things are going to progress, you'll have a good time. Fullmetal Alchemist did a great job with its side cast, and the main two characters being siblings was a good dynamic and helped the two of them develop, especially when they were separated. This is the opposite of Fullmetal Alchemist in the fact that these two siblings were actually apart for a good chunk of their lives and only now beginning to reconnect, learn about each other, and eventually develop a type of bond that they should have had from the beginning. And that is something I'm very keen and interested to see. Right now in the manga, we're in an arc that's fairly, honestly, both action-packed, but also conflict-driven between different factions, as well as a third party, essentially, being introduced that throws a wrench into things. And it just makes me all the more excited because when Fullmetal Alchemist did this whole warring factions type thing with the different factions with Mustang, the people at Briggs, the Homunculi, obviously Ed and Al, and the entire state of Amestris in this whole conspiracy that has been building up throughout the entire series for this final confrontation, seeing things getting the building blocks from a series from the very jump just makes me all the more invested. And I want to see more. I want to see more about this world, more about the actual depth of this destiny between Yuru and Asa, and how these different factions are they going to have more conflict or inevitably work together when it comes to this other faction in this whole confrontation. Now, the series is monthly, and it's about the 17th of every month. If I believe the 12th or 17th of every month should be when the next chapter ends up releasing. It's the middle of every month, so you will be able to read it whenever the chapters come out. Right now, the only legal way for you to read these chapters is through Square Enix's manga app, Manga Up, which does have kind of a gacha-style in-app purchase thing in order to actually read chapters, though they do give you a decent amount of free points from the jump. So right now, you can most likely use all these points to get roughly up to date to the manga, or at least for the first half of the manga that is currently out, so you can get a good idea of where to go. If you don't want to spend money, there are other obvious avenues you guys can also try. It's completely your choice. But at the end of the day, this is a great series that I do think you guys would enjoy, especially if you liked Fullmetal Alchemist, since it is from the exact same writer and artist. And it's just an overall joy to read. The characters are great, story has some really nice build-up towards it, and I'm liking where things are going. And the action, obviously, is very well choreographed and drawn. It's easy to follow, and the powers and stuff are fairly interesting to make things even more engaging. But that's all I gotta say for this one. Did I convince you guys to give this series a try? Let me know in the comments section down below. And if you're already somebody that is reading it, how are you enjoying it so far? And if there's any other series that you'd like me to talk about, give first impressions on, or even recommend, comment them down below. And if you haven't already, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps and shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel, and it keeps me more motivated to make stuff like this in the future. And with all that said and done, I hope you all have an awesome day.